High School, K through 9 high school in Highlands Ranch on Tuesday, killing 1 and injuring 8, some of those critically. Douglas County Sheriff Tony Spurlock making this promise.
We will get to the bottom of it to figure out how and what has occurred.
Now, deputies say that one of the shooters arrested is 18-year-old student Devin Erickson. They are not identifying the second, who is underage. The shooting at that charter school, which is a K through 12 school, happening just 1 week after a gunman killed 2 students and wounded 4 at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. The New York Times obtains some of President Trump's tax returns from his business years and reports he lost more than $1 billion over 10 years.
There are no allegations of crimes or financial misdeeds. Instead, the records go back to the late 80s, early 90s, years the president has already admitted were at the very least tumultuous. The Times is reporting because of all the losses that Trump paid no federal taxes in 8 of the 10 years. Charles J. Harder, who's a lawyer for the president, told the Times on Saturday that the information was demonstrably false.
Fox's Trace Gallagher. A House panel's just hours away from voting on whether to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress.
Democrats are intent on punishing the administration for what they believe is its stonewalling of the House's Russia collusion investigation.
Fox's Doug McElway. The Justice Department sent a letter late Tuesday night to the House Judiciary Committee warning it would request President Trump invoke executive privilege. This is Fox News.
I'm Edward James Olmos, here to remind you that the second Saturday in May is the annual Letter Carrier Food Drive. The need for food assistance remains high in communities across America, but you can help. Simply leave a bag of non-perishable food near your mailbox on the second Saturday in May, and your letter carriers will do the rest. All food collected stays within your local community. So on the second Saturday in May, please join me and the National Association of Letter Carriers and stamp out hunger.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new Sesame Ginger Glazed Chicken Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take a...
Sports announcer at home?
Yeah, how'd you...
We just know.
My wife picks up the new Signature Wrap. It's got double the rotisserie-style chicken mixed with a sesame ginger glaze. She appears annoyed at me, but she shrugs it off. Those sweet and savory flavors are calling her name. She lifts the wrap and she takes the bite! Incredible! And now she's closing the door on my... Subway, make it what you want.
Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub.
Apple and Google remove a series of dating apps after an FTC warning.
Google and Apple pull 3 dating apps from their app stores after the Federal Trade Commission alleges they let kids under the age of 13 sign up. The FTC says the apps Meet24, Fast Meet, and Meet for You, owned by Ukraine-based company Wildeck LLC, appear to violate the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, requiring companies to obtain parental consent before collecting the personal information of a minor, and the FTC Act prohibiting unfair practices likely to cause substantial consumer injury. Wildeck has yet to respond, the FTC asking the company to immediately remove all personal information of children and issuing a consumer alert warning parents. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle prove once again they will do things their way. They have yet to show the world their baby boy or reveal his name.
The decision by Harry and Meghan to keep things more private hasn't dulled the interest. In some ways, it's only ramped up the speculation, fueled by the fact that this couple and now their baby are a social media phenomenon.
Sky News reporter Rihanna Mills. And students in a Rhode Island school district who are behind their meal payments won't get hot lunches for a while.
Marie Antoinette supposedly is the one who said, "Let them eat cake," seen as a sign that royalty disregarded the plight of peasants who had no bread. Well, the Warwick, Rhode Island school district is telling students who don't pay what they owe for hot lunches, let them eat jelly sandwiches. Some parents are complaining that it's not fair to make the children suffer because their mom and dads can't or won't pay, but the school district says it's necessary because it's owed tens of thousands of dollars in unpaid lunches. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Two-for-one dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. Two-for-one dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Get a free Polar Pop any size when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a free coffee any size when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get $5 off any Circle K car wash package when you purchase $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We were going to have the Supreme Court of the United States speak to that very issue once again. However, the politicians in the state of New York are attempting to preempt that message coming from the Supreme Court. You'll recall a few weeks ago I mentioned that New York had one of the most extreme gun control laws of any state. In New York, you could have a residence permit, which allowed you to keep a firearm in your home, which is really charitable of the state of New York, since Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia has told us that a person has a constitutional right to keep a firearm in his home for his own personal protection. So New York acceded to that, but they said you can't take it out of your house. You can't put that gun in your belt and go strolling down the street like you could maybe here. The state of New York said the only place that you could take that firearm would be to one of the 6 target ranges in the city of New York. You can't take it outside the city of New York. Heaven forbid that you should think of taking it to New Jersey. You can only take it to those firing ranges, and that's it. So that particular provision was challenged. As I recall, the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York upheld the statute, as did the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and the case then went to the United States Supreme Court. And the state of New York is now trying to pull a fast one to keep the Supreme Court from ruling on that issue. I have an article here from Bearing Arms. That's that website that's got a lot of good firearm stuff on it. And the title of the article is NYC Considers Changing Rule at Heart of Scottus Case. When the Supreme Court agreed to hear a Second Amendment case, a lot of us rejoiced. I sure did. This is Tom Knighton again, the guy that writes for Bearing Arms. He says, I sure did, and I know I wasn't alone. Further, the Supreme Court was taking on New York City, which was too juicy to ignore. Sure, the case didn't hinge on overall restrictions on gun owners, just one that barred people who had, quote, premises permits from taking their guns outside the city. But, well, now the Big Apple is considering changing that rule. Efforts by the New York City Police Department and city officials to change the restrictions at issue in the case have gun owners and gun rights advocates crying, foul! Where's Jack Haddock when we really need him? As they argue, it's a transparent move by the city to preempt a ruling from the Supreme Court, which would be its first in a Second Amendment case in a decade since McDonald versus Chicago. And you'll recall that Clarence Thomas, Mr. Justice Clarence Thomas, has gone on the record bemoaning the fact that it seems like the Second Amendment is not as much of a right as some of the other amendments because the Supreme Court does not seem anxious to take on Second Amendment cases to fill in some of the gaps. So we finally got one before the Supreme Court. And now the city of New York wants to change the rules. Quote, this was a blatant attempt to stop the court case, and the changes they proposed were minuscule. Tom King, executive director of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, which is challenging the measure, said, this is their last gasp of measure to stop the case. But last month, lawyers for New York City and the New York City Police Department informed the court of a proposed rule that would allow licensed handgun owners to transport their firearms to 3 additional locations: second homes, shooting ranges, or competitions outside of city limits. If the rule were approved, lawyers for the city of New York told the Supreme Court in a letter last month it would render the case moot. Because of this possibility, the city asked the justices to put the briefing schedule on hold, pending final action on the proposed rule. The Supreme Court this week denied the request, which had gun rights organizations scoffing. You know, when something like that happens, I kind of enjoy a good
Nothing like a scoff.
Scoffing myself, yeah. Okay, anybody out there in our international radio listening audience, if you want to scoff at the fools that New York City have made themselves, be my guest. Our attitude is too little, too late. Eric Platt, executive director of Gun Owners of America, said, our hope is that the court will just continue on and deal with this head on. Attorneys for New York State Rifle and Pistol Association and handgun owners, meanwhile, argued the case has been winding its way through the court for more than 6 years, during which the city has vigorously defended the transport ban. The possible change in the law, they said, is a nakedly, a little X-rated material here, a nakedly transparent effort to evade review by the Supreme Court. I'm forced to agree. For 6 years, New York City had the opportunity to change the rule and didn't. It defended it in court instead. Now it's going before the Supreme Court. It knows damn well won't take its side. It's trying to undermine that possibility. After all, the case hinges on the ruling, but the justices may do more than overturn that rule. They may also overturn the idea of premises permits in general. The idea of not wanting a case to go to the Supreme Court isn't new either. Most recently, Washington, D.C. took a lower court ruling on the chin, a ruling that made them a shall-issue jurisdiction despite D.C.'s anti-gun leanings. It's possible that New York City has similar concerns. It may well be that they fear should the court rule against it, the Supreme Court may do so in a way as to undermine gun control efforts throughout the entire nation. Thus, the desire to change the rule and block the hearing in the first place. Luckily, it appears the Supreme Court was unswayed and will hear the case. That means that even if New York changes the rule, it has to defend the old rule at least to some degree. If it doesn't, what else will the Supreme Court overturn? The case is getting a lot more interesting. Well, and here's, get out your law and order notebooks here, all you constitutional scholars. We have Article 1, as you were, Article 3, Section 2, which reads like this. Article 1 says the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Section 2, the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity. And then farther down the page, and to controversies between two or more states, etc. So in order for any court of the United States to do its business, there has to be a case or controversy before it. Now, what the city of New York is trying to do is say, well, we changed that law. So even if it was unconstitutional, the matter is now moot. And the Supreme Court doesn't hear cases that are moot. So I could see a two-step maneuver. The New York city of New York, the defendant in the case, the appellee, says, we changed the law. It's not, we changed that unconstitutional law. Case is now moot. We move to dismiss. Goodbye. I wouldn't put it past them. So that's the Second Amendment for today. So, Real Joe Cruz, you may now open the Tom lines.
They are open, sir.
The Tom lines are open.
We have a brand new Tom on the line.
A new
Tom
Tom.
4.0.
Oh, Tom 4.0. Okay, well, we have an abundance of Toms here. You know, Will Rogers, the humorist that I mentioned when it came to the rule of holes, Will Rogers, a humorist from the 1930s, said, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. He was also famous for saying he was the all-around good guy. Will Rogers said, I never met a man I didn't like. So I'm going to plagiarize here, pretend I'm the Daily News and plagiarize, and I'm going to say, I never met a Tom I didn't like. Good afternoon, Tom.
And Bob, Will Rogers also said, I don't belong to any organized political party. I'm a Democrat.
That's very true.
So we're going to scoff. So we scoff today, and at some of these politicians, especially the state of New York and Connecticut and Massachusetts, because during the Industrial Revolution and when industry started to develop in those states, firearms manufacturing was very high on the list. It was a high-tech industry. And you can look at companies that had long histories, Remington, Ithaca Firearms in Connecticut, Colt in Winchester, and just imagine all of the revenue from the workers and the sales that had been generated in those states that had gone to fund those courtrooms and those judge altars where these judges do their litigating, do their decisions, and they'd forgotten where their revenue had come from and what really had developed their society there.
Absolutely. The Springfield Armory was the source of a lot of military weapons back in the day, Tom.
Sure, and Springfield and Smith & Wesson and, the police departments and sporting goods and, helping to feed families during the Depression and exporting these goods nationwide and high quality and precise manufacturing. And it's a shame that those industries have been dogged by these do-gooders in those areas and in search of just face time on TV.
Do you know the word leftists, Tom?
Sure, indeed, we do.
Yeah, I think that we try as much as possible. We try to blame as much as we can here on Tall Tales on the left. And the demise of the Northeast firearms industry is certainly no different.
Yeah, there we go. That's well said, Bob. Have a nice day.
Thanks a lot for calling in, Tom. Tom's, the Tom line is now open. I've got an item on the card that I think will be attractive to one of the Toms, but we'll get there. Okay, so much for the First Amendment, and the Tom line is open. I now go to Zemi Ikotny. Which is our way of saying meet the press. It's our backwards bilingual play on words. Press the meet, we turn it around and it means meet the press here on Tall Tales. And during that portion of the program, I use my blue pencil, my editor's blue pencil, to go through the editorials of both papers, mark them up. Sometimes I grade them, and I look for the better of the two, and the better of the two gets the coveted blue star. And if you are near the editorial boardroom of the Post and Tamuning, when that blue star is awarded, if you're close enough to the building, you can hear the champagne corks popping in the editorial boardroom. The same goes with the Daily News building downtown. You got to be a little bit more patient, though, to hear the champagne corks popping there, because I think the score right now is 106 for the Post and 40 for the Daily News. And the Daily News doesn't seem to be getting much better as time goes on, notwithstanding all of the constructive criticism they get here on Tall Tales. Well, here's the Daily News today. So the Daily News got off on a good start because the subject of a person is the subject of it, and she's one of my favorite people, Irene Scamboluri. I suspect she's high on your list too, Real Joe Cruz, being a Scamboluri of sorts, right?
Yeah, she was married to my grandfather's brother.
Uh-huh. The famous Ralph Scamboluri.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew them both. Oh,
really?
The late Ralph, yeah.
Yeah.
Knew him well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the story. Now, unfortunately, they got off to a good start because they're talking about Irene Scamboluri, but they screwed that up too. Here we go. Our view, delaying compensation for war survivors is an injustice. The Daily News likes to throw around words like injustice and justice, etc. And here's how it goes. Guam delegate, as you were, nearly 78 years after she watched her father dragged away as a prisoner of war, and almost 75 years after surviving weeks of bombardment by American forces, Irene Paris Ploke Scamboluri wrote a letter to the President of the United States. She wants her war reparation claim heard and paid before she dies. You can't blame her for that. It's a simple request, but for some reason, now here's where we see the Daily News, having some really good material and screwing it up again. It's a simple request, but for some reason, the United States has not been able to make it happen. Now, I guess, once again, the editorial folks don't read their own newspaper. Well, given a story like that one the other day about the dead man died, I can kind of understand it. Here's what Irene wrote. After nearly a century, I still cannot grasp why nothing has been done. We war survivors continue to be ignored. As a girl, Scamboluri lived through the Japanese invasion and occupation of Guam. As a teen, she watched as the rubble left by weeks of bombing was cleared and the island was rebuilt. Schools reopened, new businesses and industries developed. Years passed and Guam was transformed into a vibrant tourist destination. In her letter, Scamboluri pleaded with President Trump to, quote, bring this issue to light as only you can. Well, that's true. Donald Trump probably has more media communication skills than anyone we've ever seen, except maybe for Abraham Lincoln, who didn't have the advantage of Twitter for his communications. Irene goes on to say, I and other Guamanian war survivors have patiently waited for just compensation. With every passing year, more of us pass away. And for those of us who remain, we become progressively frail. In her letter, she recounted how she was left with her mother and 3 siblings to endure the atrocities of war. In his response, Assistant Interior Secretary Douglas W. Demenich explained that there were problems with the 2016 law passed to compensate war survivors. He said the administration and Guam's congressional delegate are working feverishly to correct this oversight. He acknowledged the unspeakable harm inflicted during the war: death, rape, forced marches, forced labor, personal injury. And then back to the editorial language. We are now subjecting these elders who suffered through the atrocity of war to endure the atrocity of red tape. Red tape. This is wrong. At 89, Scambaluri is one of the younger survivors. She was 11. I know a survivor that's even younger than that. Yeah. Tonight, after the program, when I'm at home in the privacy of my own home, enjoying myself, I will chat with that survivor. Yeah. At 89, Scambaluri is one of the youngest survivors. She was 11 during the invasion. Most of those who were adults are now gone. It's time to honor these survivors and fix this injustice. Okay, so the Daily News uses the word red tape. And if you're listening, Daily News, I'm going to tell you what really happened in case you want to write another letter about Irene's situation. Red tape. Red tape is an idiom that refers to an excessive regulation or rigid conformity to rules that are considered redundant or bureaucratic and prevents action or decision-making. It is usually applied to governments, corporations, or other large organizations. Things often described as red tape include filling out paperwork, obtaining licenses, having multiple people or committees approve a decision, and various low-level rules that make conducting one's affairs slower, more difficult, or both. That's not what we're dealing with here. We are not dealing with red tape. What we're dealing with is Madeline Berdaglio's screw-ups. Madeline Berdaglio, if you guys forgot, up until January of this year, Madeline Berdaglio was our delegate to Congress. And back in 2008, well, let me give you a little background here. These war claims bills are introduced in almost every Congress, and oftentimes Congress, that is the House, will pass the bills because people in the House know they'll never get past the Senate. Sometimes the bills don't go anywhere, and an easy way to understand why those bills don't go anywhere is what Robert Underwood told me and several others about his experience trying to move the war claims bills through Congress. When Robert was in Congress, he said there was a very small portion of the membership of Congress that were even veterans, much less veterans of World War II, or even alive during World War II. So I take this group of civilians, very few veterans, etc., and I have to persuade them why the United States Congress should give money to people in Guam for bad things that the Japanese did during World War II. That's not a very easy sell, and that's true. And in order to understand it, you have to understand that when the United States and Japan entered into a peace treaty in 1954, the United States forgave any war claims that Japan might have. Now, arguably, and I'm not saying that this is even a sure thing, perhaps individuals might have had claims against the government of Japan for the atrocities committed during World War II. But obtaining that money would have been a little bit more difficult than applying for Social Security when you hit 65. I don't know if it would have been possible or not. But that's the theory that would hold the United States liable for the claims of brutality brought against people on Guam by Japanese. Okay, well, I'm going to come back and I'm going to continue this. I got to spend a little bit more time talking about editorials in newspapers before I get to the card. I got some interesting stuff on the card today, like Mitch McConnell versus marijuana, and one that's sure to attract the attention of one of the Toms. It's called Diane Pappas versus testicles. And by the way, Real Joe Cruz, remind me after the halftime show. I've looked in my crystal ball last night.
Oh.
So I've got some prophecy.
I'll remind you, sir.
Thank you very much.
You came to celebrate something for Mom, and it turns into a family reunion. Mom deserves a night off from cooking, and what you found is a moment worth savoring. Create more moments to savor with Mom for Mother's Day at Chili's. Mom can choose from the ancho salmon or the classic sirloin and complete it with a beverage and the paradise pie. Chocolate chip, walnut, and coconut layered bar topped with vanilla ice cream and drizzled with hot fudge and caramel. There are a million reasons to Chili's. Make this one be about Mom. Chili's, savor the moment.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant.
Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Back in the 90s, when the United States Congress agreed that those people of Japanese ancestry that were interned during World War II were entitled to a payment from the Treasury of $20,000 per year. The story, I haven't been able to pin this down, but the story going around was that people on Guam said, some senators said, if Japanese are worth $20,000 a year, Chamorros are worth a whole lot more than that. We don't want that. But anyhow, the window was certainly open at the time when Congress was giving money away for World War II claims. But in 2008, Senator John McCain told Madeline that he would see to it that our war claims bill passed the Senate. But he said only on the condition that war claims would only be paid out to people who were alive on the day that the bill passed and those that were killed during the Japanese occupation. To simplify, let's say that Mr. X suffered through World War II, and let's say that he died in 1995, and he had 3 children. If McCain's bill had passed, the 3 children would not take any money on that particular provision. Now, Madeline had been making noise that, well, you know, when people have passed away, their heirs then should, the money should be paid to the heirs. McCain said, no, we're not going to do that. What we'll do is we'll pay the award to anyone who is alive on the day that the statute passes. Madeline said, well, I'm going to go back and check with my constituents. Now, there's some mathematical computations that I suppose one could have made at the time. Number of World War II survivors in 2008, 3,500 maybe. Number of World War II survivors plus heirs of people who suffered through the occupation and had died, 35 or 40,000. So if you're a politician and if you borrowed my political prism, which is the more attractive to you, right? So Madeline equivocated. McCain did not go forward with it. And Madeline once again proved that old mathematical proposition that 20% of something is a whole lot more than 100% of nothing. Under the McCain provision, that money would have come from the United States Treasury. So Madeline tried again during her last term. This time she said, well, okay, I'll go along with those same rules that McCain had proposed that she, in effect, rejected. And she said, but this time we'll pay the money out of our Section 30 funds. Section 30 money is the money paid by military folks into the U.S. Treasury that's covered over into the Treasury of Guam annually. It's a pretty good-sized chunk of change. So that's what Madeline was going to use to pay the war claims. Unfortunately, the way Madeline drafted her bill, it authorized the I don't know which department it was, probably the Treasury. It authorized the Treasury to pay those war claims. However, in the area of legislation and drafting legislation for the United States Congress, you must not only do the right thing, but you kind of got to do things right, or it ain't going to work. And I would direct your attention to the United States Constitution, Section 9, Paragraph 7. And here's what it says. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law. So the magic word appropriation or appropriate wasn't included in Madeline's legislation. Therefore, the guys at Treasury said, well, we've set up this tribunal to examine the cases, and they've done their job, but we can't pay any money out of the Treasury because of Article 1, Section 9. There has to be an appropriation. Now, Madeline knew that several months before the election. Guess when we found out about it? Yeah, after she'd lost. No sense telling us about it before the election. I wonder if perhaps Joey Duenas was helping her with her communication strategy at that time. So when this all came to light, Nicholas said, I will introduce a bill that has the requisite appropriation language in it. And the governor made contact with the same guy in the Department of Interior to see if there was some way of working around this appropriation language. And I suspect there isn't. So we're in line with everybody else now that wants appropriations from the Treasury. You know, it's a huge line. And Michael Bora isn't there to allow us to skip ahead in the line and take somebody else's place. Darn it. So that's why, even though these claims, some of the claims have been adjudicated, no money has been paid out. This is not red tape. This is the law. It's the United States Constitution. And I suppose I set my sights too high, but I expect people that go to the United States Congress to have at least a passing familiarity with the United States Constitution. I've almost given up on any idea that folks that write editorials for the Daily News would know anything more than the first three words of the preamble, we the people. So this is not red tape. And if you want to call it an injustice, I suppose you could arguably make that word fit. I don't see this as an injustice. I see this as people not doing what we expected them to do. A person not expecting what we would hope that she would have done, representing our interests in Washington. Now, the Daily News does this on more than one occasion. I probably can't find it. Well, in any case, I'll probably find it after the program's over, what I was looking for. Blaming things on, quote, the United States. The United States is not a person. The United States is not a unitary body. The United States government has three components: the judiciary, the executive, and the Congress. So if there is part of the government that hasn't done what we would ask them to do, it's the Congress. It's not the president. It's not the Supreme Court. And if the Congress did not bend to our will, then we have to ask, why did that happen? Don't we have representation in Congress? Answer, oh, yes, we do have representation in Congress. Well, how about all of this nationalist blab? Well, yeah, we gotta represent, but he doesn't have a vote. Well, it didn't make any difference this time. Madeline was able to introduce the bill, and one way or another was able to get it passed. All right, let's see what I got here. Yes, sure enough, the Tom line is open.
You're always lucky when you go Tom fishing, sir.
Yeah. I have to get sort of a piece to put on my desk here. You know, instead of a nameplate that's got my name on it, maybe a tom-tom that says Tall Tales on it, right? Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon, Judge. I had to call because you were talking about Will Rogers, and he is Oklahoma's favorite son, and you had one of his great sayings. But I wanted to add one more. He was also famous for saying that there are three kinds of men: those that learn by reading, those that learn by observation, and the rest have to pee on the electric fence themselves. Wasn't he a genius, Judge?
He was, yeah. Well, you know, those ranchers, Tom, you know, they had a lot of wisdom there. Yeah.
Oh, I got to give you one more before I go. I mean, I know a lot of his.
Is this Tom or is this Jimmy?
This is Tom, sir. But that wasn't so bad. I know Jimmy stunned you yesterday, but that's not so bad.
All right, go ahead.
The other one was, I hope I don't mess it up. He said the only difference between death and taxes is that death doesn't get worse every time Congress meets. No, I messed it up. I knew I would, Judge. The only difference between death and Congress is that death doesn't get worse every time Congress meets. So that's what it was.
Very good, Tom.
All right. Thank you, Judge.
I always appreciate that Oklahoma sense of humor. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I've got something that may cause you to call again. I've got something on the card dealing with castration.
Oh, good.
It's called Papas versus Testicles. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
Thanks for calling, Tom. Okay, well, the Tom line is open for all you Toms out there that want to call Tall Tales. This is a really good time. Okay, so I want to just talk a little bit about, I can't get over what the Daily News has been doing lately here, starting out with Saturday's plagiarism, blatant plagiarism of a USA Today article, and then Monday's plagiarism of a PDN article, editorial. And the fact that instead of running their own editorials, they are hooked on USA Today. I got Jimmy on the line. Well, ordinarily I don't like to break up my dialogue, but I know Jimmy is a pay-as-you-go guy, so I better not keep him waiting. Good afternoon, Jimmy.
Oh, forgive me, but I'm just calling on behalf of the Toms.
Okay.
Now, I heard you mention tomcats and castration.
I did, but not in the same sentence, but don't let that hold you up, Jimmy.
Well, now, the tomcat faction don't like that.
Okay, I'll remember that.
The Tom Turkeys, you may as well have said capitalization. Well, of course, they don't like that.
All right, I got it.
And the Tom Thumbs, talking about minimization and margination. And we have the full backing of the Tom Toms.
Of the Tom Thumbs, okay.
Yeah, and the Tom Fooey faction, they hadn't weighed in yet, but I guess they'll get around to it.
Okay, Jimmy.
Tom Farley and Tom Cruise may be making a public service commercial announcement in support of our stance. But please, on behalf of the Tomcats, do not mention Tomcats and castration in the same sentence.
I'll be alert to that one. Thanks, Jimmy. And Jimmy, by the way, are you from Oklahoma?
Missouri.
That's right. You told me that. Missouri. Yeah. Well, Missouri and Oklahoma share a common border, don't they?
Not the last time I looked.
Yeah, you could go from
I got cousins who live in Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, you can drive from Missouri right into Oklahoma, can't you?
No, you got to go through some other couple of other states. The state of frustration, state of confusion.
Okay.
State of Nebraska, state of Missouri.
Okay, well, I guess given that, I just hope that when it comes time for me to meet my maker when I die, I don't have to lie in state too long, Jimmy.
I think you have no problem when you meet the maker.
All right. Well, thanks for calling, Jimmy. It's always a pleasure. Yeah. So I guess Jimmy knows how to use the Tom line, too.
Yeah, he does.
All right. Okay, so I've got something on newspapers here that I picked up from Town Hall, and it's by a guy named Bill Morrison, who apparently was a journalist 60 years ago. And this is the title of the article. Extra, extra, newspapers found dying. And then he says, fake news, media bias, intellectual arrogance. That's my old profession. The newspaper business as contemporary Americans understand it, assuming they give our business any actual thought. Probably not. Witness the dreary statistics compiled by the Wall Street Journal in what newspapers call, or used to call, a major takeout. The Journal, one of three major newspapers seemingly assured a long life, the others being the New York Times and the Washington Post, writes that time is running out for local franchises unable to compete with Google and Facebook for advertising revenue. The market has shifted. The internet brings you everything, not just what local editors have selected and arranged for you. You choose now to believe or not to believe, to read or not to read. Such liberation from intellectual authority, the world never before imagined. And then he goes on to say, a newspaper, like a bar or a running shoe company, isn't in business for fun. It needs profit to keep the doors open, says the Journal, quoting a University of North Carolina study. Nearly 1,800 newspapers closed between 2004 and 2018, leaving 200 counties with no newspaper and roughly half the counties in the country with only one. And then he goes on to say, to which doleful account millions were they paying attention instead of checking their Facebook accounts would say, ugh, yawn. I advise resisting the temptation. The connection between local newspapers and community prosperity is large and intimate. I'm going to repeat that now. Still on Daily News here in Zemi-Yakotni. The connection between local newspapers and community prosperity is large and intimate. I don't say that the internet can ever replace it. I say the internet appears indifferent to the mission. Its preferred field of endeavor is rational, if not international. We cannot call those interests contemptible, only inadequate. The local newspaper, such as the one bold enough to hire me as a novice with nearly a journalism course on my college transcript, represents, now here's the key, represents a contract with its community. A newspaper represents a contract with its community. In return for the community's financial support through subscriptions and advertising, the local paper undertakes to portray the community, its officials and non-officials, its students and teachers, its churches and movie theaters, its failures, its successes, its ongoing challenges and opportunities, its past, its present, its future, festivals, parties, galas, fundraising enterprises. Most of all, in some venues, it's hotshot football and basketball players. That's what a newspaper is supposed to be, a contract with the community. Now, yeah, I'm going to come back here and wrap this up in the next 10 minutes.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Legends aren't born, they are made. And during our Jeep Celebration event at Cars Plus and Mighty, you'll receive up to $6,000 in accessories with the purchase of a new Jeep Wrangler, Motor Trend SUV of the Year. Customize your new Jeep to the way you want it. Or how about a new Jeep Grand Cherokee? Save up to $5,000. Or save up to $7,500 on a new Jeep Compass Sport. It's our Jeep Celebration event going on now at Cars Plus and Mighty. Cars Plus, driven by you. Accessory special cannot be combined with other offers. See dealer for details.
So a contract with the community. And that's I didn't use those words, but that's what I've been saying here about editorials. If we wanted to see the USA Today editorial, we don't have to spend $1 on a daily news to get it. We're looking for editorials that are hard-hitting, topical, timely, edgy, that relate to our own community, not something that's easily copied and pasted off the internet. And I got another one here. This one is from Red State, another good conservative website. And this one is titled, "The Quietly Sinking Ship of the Leftist Media." I wouldn't blame you if you didn't know that left-leaning media is currently dying a very slow death. Nobody wants to talk about how badly they're failing. It doesn't inspire much confidence, and to boot, the political aspects of its failure would run contrary to the, quote, "everybody's on our side" narrative that the left likes to tout. The truth of the matter is that almost everywhere you look, left-leaning media, from print to screen, is finding itself sinking like it's in quicksand. CNN is one of the best examples. CNN I think it stands for Cable News Network, but I think at one time it stood for Clinton News Network. Is one of the best examples, as it's currently experienced viewership at a 4-year low, with April as its worst month on record. As I've previously reported, CNN has lost more than 25% of its primetime audience. Well, I have a confession here. I was not part of that 25%. I didn't watch CNN. None of its programs are cracking the top 25 in cable news shows, and its primetime lineup can't even surpass 1 million viewers. In fact, you're more likely to run into someone who practices witchcraft or paganism than you are to run into a CNN viewer. Real Joe Cruz, do you watch CNN?
Never did, sir.
There you go. Proves the point right there. Like CNN, is it MSNBC or PMSNBC? I think Rush calls it PMSNBC.
Yeah, I think he does.
Yeah. MSNBC also took a hit after the release of the Mueller report, which cleared Trump of every charge the left has been throwing at him since his presidency began. Now the two leftist networks can't equal out to the prime time of right-leaning Fox News. More people watch Fox News than CNN and MSNBC combined. Over in the digital sector, BuzzFeed's left-leaning news arm was considered a, quote, drag. Now, that word has a couple of different meanings, doesn't it? On the site, and was forced to lay off 15% of its workforce after it failed to meet revenue targets. Huffington Post is suffering a similar fate, as it had to cut an entire swath of its website off along with everyone who worked on it. That part of the website that had to go was the ultra-leftist HuffPo Opinions. Vice also had to undergo layoffs. The social justice-laden Gizmodo Media Group are also feeling the sting of defeat. Univision had bought the property that includes gaming site Kotaku, and after years, Univision finally sold it off. There's no telling how bad it's going to get from here on, but there's definitely a demoralization problem amongst the leftist media. When it comes to navigating the digital Wild West, a plethora of things factor into a site's failure. Social media sites and search engines are a primary way to see news, and they're changing up their algorithms and methods at absurd speech. Advertising works differently from day to day, and what's popular now may have a shelf life of 5 minutes. Going on, we can surmise by looking at the way other industries have suffered, as places like ESPN, Dick's Sporting Goods, the NFL, and Gillette proceed to get more, quote, woke. They found themselves becoming more broke. Being a radical leftist is just bad for business, but the radical left is accepting nothing less but absolute fealty. It was only a matter of time before the news outlets that would create and foster this radical left outrage became infected by its own nonsense. Former social justice leader and game critic Anita Sarkeesian once said, "Yeah, absolutely. I sort of joke about it, but it was the most liberating thing that happened to me and most frustrating for everyone around me, because like when you start learning about existing systems, everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out to everyone all the time. So there is a good year of my life. There is a good year in my life where I was just the most obnoxious person to be around. And then you settle into it. You start to understand, like, oh, people, they can be living within the systems, and it was sort of liberating movement for me, and you learn how to pick and choose your battles." Okay, I'm going to come back to this right after the big halftime show, wrap this up, go on to the Post.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Just hours away from a vote on contempt of Congress. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The fight between the Democratic-led House Judiciary Committee and the Justice Department ramps up. The DOJ sending a letter to the panel late last night ahead of the vote on Wednesday, and Democrats are threatening to hold the Attorney General in contempt of Congress.
The Department of Justice sent a letter to Chairman Gerald Nadler of the House Judiciary Committee where it threatens executive privilege. Quoting from the letter, in the face of the committee's threatened contempt vote, the Attorney General will be compelled to request that the President invoke executive privilege with respect to the materials subject to the subpoena. The letter goes on to say this request is not itself an assertion of executive privilege. If the committee decides to proceed in spite of this request, however, the Attorney General will advise the President to make a protective assertion of executive privilege.
Fox's Doug McElway. The planned vote stems from the Attorney General's refusal to give Congress an unredacted version of the Mueller report. Deputies near Denver released the name of one of the two students arrested for allegedly opening fire at a school yesterday, killing one student and injuring 8 others. He is 18-year-old Devin Erickson. Deputies not identifying the younger underage boy.
We do know that we do not have any other suspects. We have all the people that are involved, so we're slowing everything down, and we're going to try to focus on processing that crime scene.
Douglas County Sheriff Tony Spurlock. The shooting happened at a K-12 charter school in Highlands Ranch, just miles from Columbine High, where a gunman killed 13 in 1999. The White House says its prayers are with the victims' family members and those affected by the shooting. And the survivor of a plane crash in Moscow says God will judge those passengers who grabbed their bags and prevented others from getting off the plane alive. 41 died in the crash. This is Fox News.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new Sweet and Smoky Steak and Guac Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take my ex-girlfriend, just checking in.
Aw.
Hey, David, it's me, just checking in. I'm doing great. Just got the new Sweet and Smoky Steak and Guac Signature Wrap from Subway. Creamy guacamole, smoky sweet with Hio mesquite sauce, and double the tender steak. They just know what I want before I do. So, yeah, things are going pretty great for me. Subway, make it what you want. Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub. Okay, bye.
Let's see now. Fast, easy, affordable. That's the best way to describe my home loan at Bank Pacific. Fast, because we give quick decisions. Easy, because we've cut back on the paperwork. Affordable, because today's home loan rates are still so low. So see us today to refinance or consolidate, or to buy or build your new home and save yourself some money.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
And breaking news, a deadly fire in New York City, 6 people dead. The fire department says it appears that the fire was accidental in nature. All the people dead are dead at the scene. They were a mix of adults and kids, one family. And the fire was contained to one apartment. The fire department of New York City should be giving us an update shortly. Well, the president of Iran warning the world it will resume higher uranium enrichment if new nuclear term deals are not reached within 60 days. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo trying to reassure neighboring Iraq the U.S. will stand by that country as tensions rise with Iran. He made an unannounced visit to Iraq yesterday to meet with government officials. And Disney pushes back the release date on some fan favorites.
They announced the untitled Avatar 2 has been pushed from its December 2020 to December 2021.
Outstanding.
The 2009 James Cameron film broke box office records, grossing $2.8 billion, becoming the highest-grossing film worldwide, a record that looks to be eclipsed by Marvel's Endgame. Following this December Star Wars Episode 9, Disney will release 3 more Star Wars films, skipping a year, continuing the franchise beginning December 20th, 2022. And this summer's The New Mutants and Artemis Fowl are being moved from August 2019 to 2020.
Fox's Michelle Polino and a no-hitter Tuesday night in Oakland.
For the second time in his career has thrown a no-hitter.
That call on NBC Sports California as the A's Mike Fiers pitches a gem of a game to lead Oakland to a 2-0 victory over Cincinnati. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
2-for-1 dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2-for-1 dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Ready to buy real estate on Guam? Congratulations! But what now? There's so many questions, so many things to do. Where do you start? The best place to start is to call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty, Guam's biggest name in real estate. They aren't the best because they're the biggest. They're the biggest because they're the best. Trust the name. Find out why. Call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty today. 888-2121. Trust the best.
What a great show. What a great show it is every day at 1700, 5 o'clock, marching bands, cheerleaders, drill teams, sword swallowers, synchronized card sections in the grandstand. We love every minute of it, don't we, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah.
You wanted me not to forget, to remind you not to forget to say something about your crystal ball.
Did you remember?
I did remember, because it's been bothering me.
Very good. Okay. So last night, as I was relaxing in the privacy of my own home, I decided I better look in my crystal ball. I haven't peeked in there for quite a while, so I dug around in the closet and found it. And I found that a couple of people are going to be getting new Jackie Terlahi, a lawyer, the current president of the Guam Bar, Jackie Terlahi. And the other one is a marshal at the Superior Court whose name is Vince Napati. Yeah. So I'm going to put the crystal ball away for a couple days, but I'll probably get it out before the end of the week. Probably Monday at the latest, Real Joe Cruz. Okay, so much for my crystal ball. What is the accuracy rate on my crystal ball?
99.9%, sir.
And don't we round that off?
Yes.
And so it comes out to what?
100%.
100%.
Does it say anything about me getting more money in the future? No, maybe not. Never mind, sir.
It's a crystal ball, not a magic carpet, Real Joe Cruz. But if you like, I'll look again. All right. So, don't you think it's good that we pay you what you're worth, or you figure maybe more would be better?
More is always better, sir.
More is always better. Okay. Okay, so going back, I want to wrap up this article here. The author says, miserable people are miserable to be around. And while misery loves company, no one really likes misery. Beyond that, they, meaning the leftist media, continue to take the wrong side in every fight. The Hill ran a defense for, quote, this won't be a country of white people. Ilhan Omar, that was one of her famous quotes. Yeah, that's probably right up there with on September 11, 2001, some people did something. Remember that one? Yeah, and now everybody, you know, the people who said, people who were critical of that have been branded racists and Muslims and and you name it, because they just didn't roll over and accept that. And of course, that's the leftist media. And then when she came, she was quoted as saying, "This is not going to be a white people's country." Like the article says here, The Hill defended it, a website called The Hill. CNN can't stop defending domestic terror group Antifa. That's the people that dress up in black suits with black stocking cap masks, smash windows, set cars on fire, et cetera, et cetera. Antifa, that's an acronym for anti-fascist. You would have a hard time finding a more fascist group than Antifa, but the left defends them. The leftist mainstream media is the definite bad guy in this situation. While there are definitely examples of bad guys existing in the right-leaning media, even the most bombastic of them, do you think they're talking about Tall Tales? Don't hold a candle to the left. The left actually calls for racism and sexism to thrive. It encourages bigotry and attempts to normalize the sexualization of children, be it attempting to push transgenderism or pedophilia. Or like the editorial, or like the letter from the Baptist pastor that the Daily News ran yesterday and what they call an editorial page. It goes on to say, "I think the mainstream media is taking on more water than it can bail out. It had a long-running monologue going, but despite its best efforts, it is now faced with having a dialogue with political opposites." I'll count myself in that group. It may like its head sore, as you were. It may front like it's the lead source for all things information, but the mainstream left is in trouble. Its message is floundering, and its sites and channels are becoming ghost towns. It's a very slow, very quiet death, but it's dying. And good riddance. Daily News, I hope you're listening to this, because you're running leftist stuff on your paper, which purports to be a local paper, but isn't. You're plagiarizing leftist stuff from USA Today. You're not keeping the contract with the local community. So when you go under, or when you run into bad times, don't say I didn't warn you, because I did. Okay, so much for the Daily News. By the way, the Daily News is not going to get the blue star today. Yeah. I'm tipping my hand right there. Okay, now we go to the Post, which has established a reputation of ordinarily running real editorials. And today is no exception. Without question, it's part of the governor's job to travel, particularly to Washington, so that we can establish connections with the policymakers in the nation's capital. There might also be occasions when the governor will lend a higher level of importance to a Guam trade mission or a Guam delegation trying to get more buy-in from a fledgling tourist market. We sent our lieutenant governor, though, trying to buy into a fledgling tourist market instead of the governor. I wonder why we sent him instead of her.
I think because it was an LGBTQT RSTUV WXYZ.
And then go on.
Well, he's our first openly gay lieutenant governor on Guam.
Our first openly homosexual governor. I see.
They sent him to tap the market.
I see. And then a couple days ago, we had Lasia Casil complaining that when we sent somebody to the transgender queen contest, we sent a young lady named McNinch. Remember that? So our government apparently is embracing identity politics right along with everybody else. Okay. I think some of the same things that came out of the article that I just read about the leftist media is going to come to haunt some of the people that are right now riding pretty high. Going on with the editorial. But elected and appointed officials should also not trick taxpayers with a pitch that all travel is paid for with Guam funds or federal funds are necessary. Don't trick the taxpayers. An example of this would be trips certain mayors made to mango and strawberry festivals in the Philippines. These trips weren't justified, and these mayors can do us all a favor by not pretending that they were. And senators could do us a favor by not letting them have the money from gambling because they won't use it properly. There are unnecessary publicly funded travels, and history has shown that certain officials in a position to get paid trips on public checkbooks have found creative ways to find, quote, official conferences as a justification for the travel. There have been times when these conferences also happen to be near an area where family members reside, the officials' children attend college, or where a family vacation can be annexed to the official travel. Well, I've been talking too much. I need a little break here, so I'm going to check. And the Tom line is open. Yeah. So I'm going to go to the real Tom here and see what the real Tom can tell us this afternoon. Good afternoon, real Tom.
Good afternoon, sir. You know, earlier you were talking about what the CNN really stands for.
Uh-huh.
I got an idea. I think in Tamil it stands for Common News Night.
Uh-huh. Common News Night.
Yeah.
I like it, Tom. Yeah.
Then MSNBC, it stands for Many Said Never Believe Conservatives.
Uh-huh.
I got something for you to cheer you up a little bit.
Okay.
Why did God invent lawyers?
Whoa, that's a tough one, Tom. I'd be probably the last person you should ask.
I think the answer is so that real estate agents would have someone to look down on. What's the one thing that never works when it's fixed?
I give up, Tom.
I think the answer is a jury.
It never works when it's fixed.
Yeah, a jury.
Yeah, I guess you're right, Tom.
U-R-Y. So anyway, what do you call a smiling, courteous person at a bar association convention?
A smiling person at a bar association convention.
Yeah, it's the caterer. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. I enjoy your show, sir.
I appreciate your little bits of humor, Tom. Thanks for calling in. You're a valuable part of the Tom Network here.
There's a few more, but I'll let other people chime in.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, bye.
So long. Yeah, so the infamous Tom Network. Okay, so going on with the editorial, we're not saying this is what's going on in the early months of the Governor Leon Guerrero administration, but we're beginning to see actions related to travel that might not be in the best interest of use of government resources. At a time when taxpayers are struggling to cope with a higher cost of living as a result of tax increases, utility cost increases, healthcare, food, housing, and gasoline price increases. Last year, taxpayers were made to believe that tax increases were necessary because the government of Guam was facing a financial crisis. Early in this administration, there have been proposals to roll back some of the tax increases to give taxpayers relief. But these proposals have gone nowhere. In contrast to the speedy approvals of special interest legislation such as for recreational marijuana promotion and gambling operators that want to bid for Liberation Carnival operations. Yeah. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, Real Joe Cruz. The Guam Daily Post reporting Tuesday and Thursday. In the Guam Daily Post reporting Tuesday and Thursday, there have been publicly funded travels that taxpayers can reasonably question as maybe not that necessary. Do taxpayers really need to pay for 33 days of travel in a span of less than 5 months for Governor's Chief of Staff, Anthony Babauta? 15 days of which was labeled as a meet and greet with FEMA's Pacific Area office in Honolulu, and having to attend the National Pandemic Summit in Nebraska. Now, of course, I looked in my crystal ball, and I said that the governor's chief of staff, Anthony Babauta, was job hunting. And I haven't walked away from that prediction yet, but doing a lot of traveling, not inconsistent with job hunting. Do taxpayers agree with thousands of dollars spent on senior advisor and former Governor Carl Gutierrez and other GovGuam paid travelers' trip to Las Vegas to attend an economic opportunity zone conference being hosted at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino? It's up to taxpayers to decide. But one thing's clear. The administration can't have it both ways by continuing to justify keeping the tax increases and at the same time paying for or sending officials on travel that are not all that necessary. Well, I don't need an algorithm to add up the points here that the two editorials won today. So as has almost become a habit with me, I once again award the coveted Blue Star to the Guam Post. And that takes it up to $112 for the Post, $40 for the Daily News. And the Daily News is lucky that they still got 40. I'm tempted to take 5 of them away from their performances over the weekend and yesterday. I'm just too nice a guy, Real Joe Cruz. I guess you noticed that. Yeah. Okay, so much for Zemi Ikatni. And now I go to the card, and as I mentioned, I've got some interesting items on the card. I've got Mitch McConnell versus marijuana. I've got Diane Pappas versus testicles. I've got Schatz versus Guam. Fernandez versus Wanpat. Governor Leon Guerrero versus the Rainy Day Fund. Malaysia versus Chinese. In the same bout as the left versus Western civilization. Tlaib versus Americans. You know who Tlaib? I had a really good one on Tlaib, but I never got to it, and it kind of got sorted out of the queue. But she and Omar are two of the best reasons I can think of for repeating the argument. Our strength is our diversity. Then we've got Byrne versus Byrne. This sounds like something out of Saturday Night Fever, doesn't it? Too bad we can't use the music like that, Real Joe Cruz. And then I've got Critical Thinking versus Liberty. Also Bavakwa and Zinn versus the church. I don't know if I'll get to that. But once again, if I don't get to it today, it's timeless. It's like good wine or cheese. It doesn't spoil because of the passage of time. It'll still be relevant whenever I get to it. Okay, so starting out with Mitch McConnell versus marijuana. And this is something that I found on an investor's website called The Motley Fool. Yeah. The four-letter, in the title of the article, the four-letter word that could prevent U.S. marijuana legalization. It's a four-letter word. Yeah. And it's not one of the 7 words you can't say on the radio. Will the U.S. legalize marijuana? Although 33 states have legalized medical cannabis and 10 have also legalized recreational pot, marijuana remains illegal at the federal level. But legislation is moving through the U.S. Congress that would change federal laws to recognize individual states' authority to enforce their own marijuana laws, which is something I'm in favor of, by the way. I've explained this before. For me, this question doesn't turn on whether marijuana is good or bad. It turns on the concept of federalism. And when it comes to the criminal laws of a jurisdiction, that should be a function of state law, not the national government. So I would be in favor of that. You can pretty much count on the marijuana legislation bill passing the House of Representatives. Senator Cory Gardner, Republican of Colorado, a sponsor of the bill, thinks that the votes needed to pass the legislation in the Senate are there. He also stated that President Trump supports the effort. But don't put the cart before the horse. There's a 4-letter word that could stand in the way of U.S. marijuana legislation. Are you ready for the 4-letter word, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm ready, sir.
That 4-letter word is spelled H-E-M-P. Yep. H-E-M-P.
Hemp.
Hemp. Hemp, like marijuana, comes from the cannabis plant. A key difference is that hemp contains very low levels of THC, the primary psychoactive ingredient in cannabis. While marijuana contains a significant amount of THC, because of this difference, a person can get high from using marijuana, but not from consuming hemp. So I guess I needn't spend a lot of time relaxing in the privacy of my own home consuming hemp. The major chemical difference helped clear the way for U.S. legalization of hemp in December of 2018. The 2018 Farm Bill that included language making hemp legal in the U.S. received overwhelming bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. One of the biggest cheerleaders for the Farm Bill was Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican from Congress. The senator used his position as Senate Majority Leader to help ensure that hemp legalization was included in the Farm Bill and was instrumental in pushing the bill across the finish line. Mitch McConnell. McConnell's home state of Kentucky has become a hotbed of hemp production. The senator stated in an interview last year that hemp, quote, could be big for this state. McConnell added, "I don't know how big this can become, but I know we're ahead of everybody else." That was kind of the Parkinson argument for legalizing marijuana in Guam. We want to do it quick before the feds make it legal. Remember that? McConnell said, "We're not afraid of competition. Probably the greatest opportunity for the hemp industry is extracting cannabidiol, CBD for use in a variety of products. Cannabis market research company Brightfield Group even projects that the U.S. hemp CBD market could reach $22 billion by 2022. That estimate could prove to be overly optimistic, but there should nonetheless be a substantial market for CBD products. An offshoot of this opportunity, though, is that McConnell's enthusiasm for hemp could present a big hurdle for marijuana legalization. CBD can also be extracted from cannabis plants used for marijuana. If federal laws change to recognize individual rights to make their own decisions on legalization of marijuana, the competitive advantage that McConnell sees for Kentucky's hemp industry could be jeopardized. Now, do you think that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, would play politics with something like this? Do you think he would? I can think of only one circumstance that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, would play politics with this marijuana question. That one circumstance would be if he had the chance. Otherwise, he wouldn't do it. Okay, we're not going to spend any time looking for Jack Haddock today. It's just a happy memory.
You came to celebrate something for Mom, and it turns into a family reunion. Mom deserves a night off from cooking, and what you found is a moment worth savoring. Create more moments to savor with Mom for Mother's Day at Chili's. Mom can choose from the ancho salmon or the classic sirloin and complete it with a beverage and the paradise pie. Chocolate chip, walnut, and coconut layered bar topped with vanilla ice cream and drizzled with hot fudge and caramel. There are a million reasons to Chili's. Make this one be about Mom. Chili's, savor the moment.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Can you remember a positive customer service event that happened to you, or how you were treated or something said has stuck with you over time? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, let's talk about doing things for customers that make you memorable.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Seventh inning stretch from Wrigley Field. And you know what, Real Joe Cruz? I just got a call on my cell phone from someone who's at Wrigley Field right now.
You don't say.
Yeah. You know who he saw?
Who could it be?
It's not who he saw.
It's who he didn't see.
Okay, so this article here on Mitch McConnell goes on to explain that Mitch McConnell wants Kentucky to prosper, and according to the author here, is looking to give Kentucky the edge on the hemp industry. On the other hand, McConnell also wants to remain majority leader of the Senate. And in order for him to do that, there has to be more Republicans in the Senate than there are Democrats. And one of the keys here is Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado, who could be flipped. Could be the Democrat could beat Cory Gardner. So the Republicans need every seat that they can get. So Gardner's chances of re-election may turn on whether or not he is successful in getting this cannabis bill through the U.S. Senate. So this puts McConnell in a kind of a bind. Do I want a thriving industry in Kentucky? Or do I want to be the majority leader for the U.S. Senate? And the article winds up by saying, McConnell knows that every seat will count. Gardner's seat because it would eliminate the possibility of U.S. government intervention in Colorado's large marijuana industry. And it could ultimately decide whether or not Mitch McConnell is still the Senate Majority Leader in 2021. However, McConnell's political calculations could lead him to roll the dice and block any attempt to vote on marijuana legalization in the Senate. If that happens, the fate of the U.S. marijuana legalization is likely to hinge on the outcome of the 2020 elections. So I think it's interesting that McConnell might roll the dice. I wonder if he'll come out here to our Liberation Day Carnival in order to roll the dice, because marijuana and gambling at the carnival seem to be two very tightly related issues.
So does that mean we can grow hemp here, sir?
Yeah.
We can.
Yeah, you can grow hemp.
Nice.
Yeah. I probably told you stories about hemp when I was a kid during World War II. Southern Wisconsin, I don't know how it worked. I suppose the government's hand was in it, but farms all over southern Wisconsin raised hemp. And you knew it was hemp because when it was harvest time, they would cut it into maybe 6 or 7 foot rolls and then stack those rolls in the field. And a wagon would come along and pick them up. But the explanation was, yeah, we need the hemp for the war effort. You know, you make rope out of hemp. I've got a shirt at home that I bought in the Caribbean that's made out of hemp. Yeah, maybe someday I'll wear it. It's probably the closest I'll ever come to marijuana.
We can smoke it together, Bob.
Well, I don't know if I'd go all that far, but I glanced out of the corner of my eye here, and I think I saw something in here about cannabis or something. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, I got Joe Cruz. Now, this isn't you. This is another Joe Cruz. Another Joe Cruz says, cannabis versus Klitzkie, and cannabis won. And then yeah. You're supposed to cheer for me, real Joe Cruz. A cult of personality again. And then another Joe Cruz says, going to name a cannabis strain Klitzkie Blue Star. Wouldn't that make a clever brand? And then Brad Hewitt says, that strain better give the user more intelligence, unlike others that take it away. Yeah, okay. My sentiments exactly. So much for the Triple J Rangers. Okay, next item on the card here is Diane Pappas versus testicles. Just check your board there and make sure that the Tom line is open. Yeah,
it is, sir.
It is, okay. So I've got something here from Red State, and the title is Culture Wars, Volume Number 99, Mermaids, Castration, and Climate Change. Welcome to another edition of the Culture Wars, which features 6 crazy stories from the past week or weeks that may or may not have made the hallowed pages of Red States. Berkeley, California has banned plastic straws and plastic bags at grocery stores. They found something else to ban. The city recently passed an ordinance that requires customers to pay a 25-cent surcharge for using a to-go coffee cup. Next up to ban, paper napkins. And then we've got Canadian law. We always used to look to the north. We thought those folks up there, they're kind of like us, but, they're a little more straight-laced. They're sober, hard-working people, kind of Americans at their best. Not anymore. A judge in British Columbia has ruled that the father of a transgender daughter is guilty of family violence since he continues to refer to his daughter as she. Wow. Now, I know a lot of people in our country would know that you'd refer to your daughter as what, Real Joe Cruz?
They?
Of course. Yeah. If you had two daughters, what would you refer to them as?
Them.
Okay, now the British Columbia Court Protection Order directs police to arrest the father if he refers to his daughter with a feminine pronoun, call her by her birth name, or in any way interfere with her gender transition. Canada. Susan Collins, and here's a mermaid challenger. Susan Collins of Maine, who may be the last sane Democrat in the Senate. I didn't realize there were any, but I'll give them this proposition. Actually, I think Susie's a Republican. Yeah. Has drawn a doozy of a challenger in 2020, should she run for re-election. Bray Kidman. The self-described Kidman is, quote, a criminal defense attorney by day and a radical, fat, queer performance artist, musician, activist most of the other time. Oh, that's quite a bio. Another biography describes them, meaning Kidman, right? Describes them as, quote, queer, feminist, lawyer, mermaid, writer, activist, and artist. Wait, did they say mermaid? So I guess if you see a mermaid, you don't say, hey, look at the mermaid, or hey, look at the fish.
Merthey.
They.
The merthey.
They. Okay, and then we've got the feminist answer to abortion. In response to a pending bill in Illinois akin to the infanticide measure passed in New York and attempted in Virginia, one state representative, this is a representative in the Illinois legislature named Diane Pappas, has a unique solution when she told a group of opponents to that bill, well, let's just see what she said. She said, quote, with technology the way it is, we wouldn't have an abortion problem if we applied a plan. Now, I've been told it's a bit radical, but if we allowed men to be castrated, took the sperm to the bank, collected tax dollars on it for storage, then when it's time to have the man decide he's ready to begin a family, well, the problem is solved. So there you have it, problem solved. It also solves another problem, the shortage of choir sopranos. Okay, so that's the idea then. Castrate men, charge them for storage of their anatomy, and when it's time, when the man decides he wants to have children, extract some sperm from his testicles. Are our phones working, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Is the Tom line open?
Yes, sir, it is.
Are you sure?
It's absolutely open.
My lights aren't, there's no light here lighting up.
He might be in the middle of a castration himself.
It's true, he is a veterinarian,
Yeah.
isn't he? Yeah. Good point, Real Joe Cruz. I'm sure glad you're here.
It's probably hurting him, though, that he can't make the call.
No doubt, no doubt. Okay, next on the list is Schatz versus Government of Guam, as you were, Schatz versus Guam. And this is what it says. This is something I got from KOM. Could there be a major shift in the size and makeup of the Marine buildup? Hawaii Senator Brian Schatz is again questioning the Marine mission on Guam. In a budget hearing Friday, Schatz pressed Marine Commandant General Robert Neller on whether they should consider basing forces in Guam because the lack of airlift to rapidly deploy the troops. Quote, if the purpose of having Marines on Guam is to be in the region, to be forward, to be ready to fight tonight, and there's a moment and you have to fight tonight and then you have to wait for San Diego to bring you the lift, it defeats the purpose, Schatz questioned. You might as well keep them in Conus or, guess where, real Joe Cruz? Hawaii. Yeah, Hawaii. So tell me why this makes sense other than the geopolitical commitments and the difficulty on Okinawa. What's your personal view? Does this make sense still? The plan, and this is what the commandant said, the plan is, as it's currently designed, is worthy of a possible review, Neller replied. That's my personal and professional opinion. Thank you. General Neller responded earlier that in order to rapidly deploy troops of any significant size, they would have to rely on strategic lift aircraft or high-speed amphibious vessels from outside Guam, such as Japan or the West Coast. He also said that the type of forces to be stationed on Guam won't be, quote, solidified until later this year. So that's an interesting story. There's going to be Marines that are going to go to Hawaii, and there are some that are going to go to Australia, and there's some that are going to go to U.S., but for the most part, they're going to be coming to Guam. Governor Leon Guerrero said, some of those are going to be coming on a rotational basis, etc. So the gist of, or the thrust of this story is that Brian Schatz, I could have fun with that name too, couldn't I?
Yes, sir.
Brian Schatz appears to be angling to get those Marines stationed in Hawaii. No doubt he's motivated by the good of the Marine Corps. What do you think, Jimmy?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was just chasing the chickens out of the cat food.
Say again?
I was, okay, I got a bunch of cats around here, and then the chickens come around and they eat the cat's food.
Okay.
But it's not chicken. Anyway, is it okay to say the P word?
Is it okay to say the P word?
The P word on the radio?
I don't think so, Jimmy. I know too many words that start with P.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how the GovGuam tax raises are like someone doing the P word on your foot?
Why is that, Jimmy?
One of you feels better, but it's certainly not you.
I have a hard time understanding you today, Jimmy. Can you get a little closer to the phone?
Yeah. GovGuam tax raises are like someone doing the P word on your foot.
Okay.
One of you feels better, but it's not you.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Jimmy.
Hey, I'm not a radio announcer.
No, but you do okay, Jimmy. We always appreciate your calls.
Hey, you would, how about some bumper music?
Well, I'm
on a jet plane.
There we go, Jimmy. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're coming up to that last break here and the home stretch.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
Docomo Pacific's all-new business bundles provide tailored solutions to help your business become a better business. Choose from our Business Basic, Essential, or Value bundles and get unlimited talk and text, worry-free data at home and abroad, plus access to the fastest online speeds in the Marianas. Add on mobile or broadband lines and save up to 20% for each line. Email businesssales@docomopacific.com to find out which bundle provides the best solution for your business. Terms and conditions apply.
So here we are, heading down the home stretch. That means I got about 8 minutes here to wrap up another informative, exciting, accelerating issue of Tall Tales. But have no fear, the real Joe Cruz and I will be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock sharp to start another episode of Tall Tales, your favorite talk show. And I just had a chance to gaze at out of the corner of my eye here, and I got an interesting comment from another Joe Cruz. Not you, not the real Joe Cruz, but another Joe Cruz. And another Joe Cruz said that he ate some Mexican food on Cinco de Mayo, and he had kind of a bad experience with it. Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I'm not sure, but he did mention the name of that guy from Hawaii.
He got the shats?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, it's that the Triple J Rangers. You never know what they're going to come up with next, right? Okay, so going back to that article, so the general says maybe we ought to take another look at it. And this is what I understand about the whole relocation to Guam. It was not the Marine Corps' favorite location. Yeah. And the reason is that it's the same reason that I trot forward so often. Guam is a small island. Marines need a lot of room to train. Camp Pendleton, California, for example, I think is like 70% as large as the entire island of Guam, and it's all for training. And then out in the desert, there's a Marine Corps base called 29 Stumps, actually 29 Palms. It's much bigger than that, and that's where the Marines go for artillery and armor training. So it takes a lot of area to train Marines, and it just isn't here on Guam. So the Tinian dimension is very important because you recall when the United States entered into the covenant with the Northern Marianas, the United States took a 99-year, or was it a 50-year lease on about the northern 80% of Tinian. And it's not Camp Pendleton, but you can train Marines up there. Now you compare that, say, with Australia, where there's just so much room for training, etc. Or even Okinawa, which is bigger than Guam. So the Marines weren't really crazy about moving here, but as mentioned in this article here, there are geopolitical considerations. That is that the United States beat Japan in World War II, and as a part of the end of World War II, the United States occupied Okinawa until 1972. It was occupied territory. And no country likes to have occupation forces stationed in it. So that was not a high point of Okinawa-U.S. relationship during the period of occupation. There's a very strong Communist Party in Okinawa that really beat the drum for reversion, still very strong. There's a lot of internal jealousy and envy between Okinawa and the rest of Japan, because Okinawa gets stuck with, like 80% of the Americans stationed in Japan are in Okinawa. And the Okinawans are saying, we ought to spread this around. The rest of you guys are not doing your share. And then there was a really unfortunate rape incident that happened in 1996, which the activists talk about as though it happened yesterday. So there are a lot of geopolitical reasons why both the United States and Japan probably want to move some of the Marines out of Okinawa. And that's how a decision was made to move some of them here. Now, I think we've gone, but the sunk cost factor is such that I don't think that regardless of what General Neller's possible evaluation shows, I don't think that decision is going to be turned around. Because the Japanese have invested, the Japanese agreed to pick up like $8 billion worth of the tab of moving the Marines from Okinawa here. And they've already spent some money here on a solid waste treatment plant, etc. So I think that the boat has moved too far away from the dock to turn it around. So I think the Marines are going to come for good or for ill. I happen to think that it's a great thing for Guam. We only have two industries, tourism and Marines, sailors, whatever. So by bringing in 4,000 Marines, we're going to bring in dollars that will help us run our economy, and we certainly need it. So I don't read the tea leaves in Commandant Neller's cup to show that all of a sudden we're going to pick up the paper, Marines change mind, right? I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to proceed on with the plans as they are in place, and by another 4 or 5 years, we're going to see lots of guys showing up with green trousers and tropical shirts. They're called Marines.
Our beloved Corps.
Exactly. Okay, well, it's not the Marine Corps hymn, but it's still a really good song, and it brings Tall Tales to an end for today. As per my usual remarks, it's hard to hang up. Hard to quit when you're having so much fun. But we'll see you all tomorrow. So long.